Punishing me for underperforming for 1 day in 2 years? No problem. So, this happened over the past several months. And honestly, it still gives me a quiet kind of satisfaction every single day I go into work. Let me give you some background first. I work at a company where my job is handling mid to high level complaints. We're talking about escalations that go to managers, PR teams, and legal. It is not light work. Some days a case takes 5 minutes to close. Other days I am on a 2-hour Zoom call with lawyers in New York. You never really know what you are walking into when you open a new ticket. The daily requirement for my role is 40 cases handled per day. That is the number the company sets, and from what I see on my team, some of my colleagues genuinely struggle to hit it. I am not saying that to talk down about anyone. The work genuinely varies in difficulty, but personally, I never had a problem reaching 40. In fact, I never felt the urge to just stop there. So for the past 2 years, I have been consistently handling somewhere between 50 and 55 cases every single day. That is not a small gap. That is 10 to 15 cases above the daily requirement every working day for 2 years. If you do the rough arithmetic, we are talking about tens of thousands of extra cases I processed over that period compared to what was actually asked of me. And here's the thing. There was no bonus attached to this. No recognition, no financial incentive, not even a formal acknowledgement in a review. I was not doing it to chase a reward. I just felt a kind of friendly obligation to the company. I like staying productive. I did not feel good about sitting on my hands once I hit an arbitrary number, so I kept going. Simple as that. For 2 years, every day, okay? So that is the background. Now let me tell you about the event that changed everything. A few months back, I had one of those days where everything stacked against me at once. I woke up feeling a bit sick. Not bad enough to call out, but definitely not at full capacity. And as luck would have it, that particular day dealt me an almost entirely bad hand in terms of case difficulty. One after another, I was pulling complex, time-consuming tickets. The kind where you cannot just read, respond, and move on. The kind where you are cross-referencing documents, drafting careful communications, waiting on callbacks. By the end of the shift, I'd completed 39 cases, 39. One case below the daily requirement. I genuinely did not think much of it. My weekly numbers were, as always, well above anything the company could complain about. My monthly average was sitting comfortably above 50 per day. My yearly performance over 2 years was essentially a long, unbroken streak of overachievement. One difficult day at 39 felt like a statistical rounding error in the context of everything else. I went home, rested, felt better the next morning, came back in, and returned to my usual numbers without a second thought. Then Monday came. I got flagged for an emergency one-on-one with my manager. Not a scheduled check-in, not a casual conversation. An emergency meeting. I walked in not entirely sure what to expect, and then I was told, with apparent seriousness, that I would be required to attend a 3-day workshop and seminar on how to best meet performance requirements. The reason? I had underperformed last week. I remember my jaw actually dropping. I asked, as calmly as I could manage, whether they look at weekly numbers, monthly numbers, yearly averages, whether any of that context was factored in. I was told, in very flat terms, that the daily requirement is 40 cases, that I'd recorded 39 on one day, and that this workshop attendance was standard practice. Nothing they could do. So I was being sent to a remedial performance seminar, the kind designed for colleagues who are regularly submitting 20 or 25 cases a day, because I, the person averaging 50 to 55 daily for 2 consecutive years, had one sick day where I finished at 39. The workshop itself was not hard to sit through in terms of content. It was 3 evenings after work, which meant I had to drive there on my own time. Once I arrived, I sat and listened to HR professionals explain how to handle complaints more efficiently and reach the target of 40 cases per day. These were people who had never actually handled the cases in real life. They were speaking in generalities, offering surface-level advice that would have been marginally useful to someone genuinely new to the role and completely irrelevant to me. At one point, I had to participate in a group discussion about what steps I would take to improve my numbers and, in their words, reach the 40. I sat there and thought about 2 years of 50-plus cases a day. I thought about the 0 bonuses and the 0 formal recognition. I thought about the drive I'd just made on my own time, 3 nights running, to sit in a room and be lectured about a job I do better than almost anyone on the team. I was livid. That is the honest word for it. Not dramatically furious, not making a scene, just the deep, slow-burning kind of anger that comes when you realize that the goodwill you have been extending freely for years was never really seen, and the one tiny moment you fall short is treated as a formal performance incident. I drove home on the 3rd night, and I had a long think, and I made a decision. A very clean, very simple decision. They told me my daily requirement is 40 cases. They sent me to a seminar to reach the 40. Their own official position, delivered in that Monday morning meeting, was that the standard is 40 per day, and nothing more or less than that is what the policy tracks. So from that point forward, I decided I would do exactly that. I would reach the 40, precisely the 40. And then I would do absolutely nothing for the rest of my shift. I am not exaggerating. I go in, I work at a pace I'm comfortable with, I close my 40 cases, and then I stop. Whatever time is left in the shift, I am essentially idle. I am present. I am not breaking any rule. I am meeting my daily requirement to the letter, which according to the company's own stated policy, is all that is required of me. The difference in my day is actually noticeable. I used to push through constantly, never really letting up, always looking for the next ticket because I felt that pull to keep going. Now there is a natural stopping point, and once I reach it, the pressure is gone. In a strange way, they accidentally gave me a more comfortable working day in exchange for losing thousands of cases worth of output over the months that followed. The reaction from management has been, I will say, entertaining in a dry sort of way. I have had multiple one-on-one meetings since I made this change. My manager asks me whether something is wrong, whether everything is okay, whether there is anything I want to talk about, and I play it completely straight. I say I am not aware of any problem. I ask, as innocently as I can, whether I am underperforming. And of course, they have to tell me no. I am meeting my daily requirement. I am 100% within the standard. So I thank them and the conversation ends, because there is nothing else they can say without acknowledging exactly what they did. I do not deliver any clever speeches. In real life, those moments rarely land the way they do in your head, and I am not looking to make enemies or cause a scene. I just keep playing the part of the confused, well-meaning employee who genuinely cannot understand why there would be any concern, given that they are hitting their number every single day. What I find satisfaction in, and this might sound small to some people, but it feels significant to me, is knowing that they got used to what I was giving them. For 2 years, my output was the baseline they planned around. Whatever their internal projections looked like, whatever expectations had quietly formed around my team's capacity, a meaningful portion of that was built on the assumption that I would just keep doing 50-plus cases indefinitely, for free, because I always had. And now, that cushion is gone. Not because I am underperforming, not because anything is technically wrong, just because they handed me a very clear signal about how my effort was valued, and I responded accordingly. Before Easter, I noticed they put up an internal posting for 2 additional manager positions. My read on that, and I will be honest, it is a read, not a certainty. is that they are now looking at having to pay 2 additional people at a management level to account for the volume that has shifted since I stopped carrying extra weight. That is speculative on my part. I do not have access to the internal reasoning, but the timing is hard to ignore. If that is what is happening, it is a beautifully expensive lesson that could have been avoided entirely. Not with a bonus necessarily. Not even with money. A simple acknowledgement that context matters. That a person who handles 50 cases a day for 2 straight years and then has one hard day at 39 while feeling sick is not the target audience for a remedial performance workshop. That is all it would have taken. Instead, they applied a rigid policy without a moment's thought, cost me hours of my personal time, and in doing so, communicated very clearly that my 2 years of extra effort had no formal meaning, so I should stop treating it as though it did. I'm not angry anymore, for what it is worth. The anger burned off in those first few weeks. Now it is more like a quiet, settled clarity. I know exactly what I owe this company because they told me, in an official meeting with my manager present, 40 cases a day. I am delivering that faithfully, every single shift. And if they ever want to have a frank conversation about what changed, I am ready for it. I just have a feeling they already know. A customer berated me daily for not sending her refrigerator manual fast enough. I fixed that. This goes back to the early thousands. I was working at Home Depot as a department manager, mostly in the appliance section. I was young. I was eager. I was one of those genuinely idealistic types who'd volunteer for basically anything if you asked with a smile. Good energy, good intentions, the whole package. It was a solid job, honestly. Taught me a ton, including some real eye-opening lessons about how cheap and entitled people can get when they think they've got leverage over you. But this particular story is about the moment it taught me something far more valuable than any of that. The customer is always right. No, really. Stick with me. So we were doing what's called a model shift on the floor. New Year's models had come in, which meant the current floor models got marked down to clear them out and make space. Now, if you've never worked retail, floor models don't come with their original packaging or manuals. Those got tossed weeks, sometimes months before, because there is no back of the store to store them in. That's literally the whole point of the markdown. The price is lower because it's a display unit. No box, no paperwork. Everybody who's ever bought a floor model understands this going in. That's just the deal. Anyway, I've got a Maytag refrigerator on the floor. Bottom freezer model, if I'm remembering right. Marked down to what I genuinely thought was a more than fair price. In walks an older woman, probably in her 60s, so we're talking born sometime around the Depression era. Solidly pre-boomer. She comes in, she wants the fridge. Great. We go through the whole transaction, get everything squared away, and then right at the end as we're wrapping up, she asks, can she get the manual for it? And I told her, hey, we don't have the original manual anymore, but here's what I'll do. I'll call Maytag directly and have them mail one out to her. I'd done this many times before. Maytag was always happy to send replacement manuals. It was a completely routine thing. She said, great, perfect, thank you very much. Everyone's smiling. Refrigerator goes home with her that same day, and before end of day, I'm already on the phone with Maytag. They said no problem. They'd get a manual in the mail to her address. Done. Clean. Easy. I didn't give it another thought. 2 days later, and I want to be really precise about this because the timeline here is genuinely insane. Barely 2 days later, not even a full 48 hours, I get a call forwarded from the customer service desk, and it's her. No hello, no greeting, no. Hi, this is so-and-so. I bought a fridge the other day. Just straight out of the gate. Where's my manual? I actually blinked. I had to take a second just to process the question because it had been 2 days. Not even. I said, ma'am, it's only been 2 days. They're mailing it from Iowa. It's probably going to take a week or two to get to you. She launched into a tirade. 30 seconds, maybe a full minute, felt longer, about how we were all liars and cheaters. How dare we promise her something and then not deliver, the whole righteous indignation symphony. I kept my voice level. I reassured her it was on its way, and we hung up. The next day, she called again. "Where's my manual? Why isn't it here? Why are you trying to cheat me?" I explained again, patiently, how the postal service works and approximately how long mail takes to travel from one state to another. The next day, she called again. I was starting to feel something other than patience at this point, but I kept it professional. I told her I had personally confirmed with Maytag that her manual was on its way, and these things simply take time. Day 4. Consecutive days she had called. 4 in a row. When customer service transferred that call to me, I, internally, absolutely lost it. Like a full meltdown behind the eyes, the kind where you can feel your pulse in your forehead. Externally, I was a picture of calm. I said very politely, "Ma'am, you are absolutely right, and I am going to make sure I make this right for you." And I meant it. I meant every word. Here's where we are at this point in the story. I had already called Maytag twice. Once the day she bought the refrigerator, and a second time just to confirm that the first request was actually in the system and being processed, so she was already getting 2 manuals sent to her address. 2. She didn't know that, and clearly 2 wasn't going to be enough. This woman needed her manual, and by everything that was holy, I was going to make sure she got it. I started calling Maytag twice a day. Every single day I worked, 2 calls. Each one a fresh, polite, new request to please send a manual to her address. I was not escalating, I was not angry, I was not making it anyone's problem. I was just a concerned department manager, following up on behalf of a customer who had been very, very clear about how important this was to her. And look, I want to talk about commitment for a second because I think this is important context. I worked Saturday and Sunday that particular week, and I had Monday and Tuesday off. Maytag's office is closed on weekends. So technically, I could have just waited until Wednesday when I was back on the schedule. That would have been the reasonable thing to do. The reasonable thing is not what happened. Instead, I drove to the store on my day off, my actual day off, specifically to use the store phone and make those calls, because I was not going to let a non-business day cost this woman a single manual she was owed. That's just the kind of dedicated employee I was. This went on for close to 2 weeks, twice a day, every business day, sometimes on my own time. And then eventually, one of the Maytag reps picked up the phone and said, very carefully, "Hey man, we've got about 10 or 15 requests in the system for this address. Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely. The customer needs her manual. Please send another one, to their eternal, undying credit. And I mean this sincerely. God bless whoever was working that phone line at Maytag. May the light forever shine on their life and career." They did not question it again. They just kept processing the requests, every single one. And then, finally, the call I had been waiting for arrived. She called. But this time she didn't sound angry. She sounded confused, a little rattled actually. She told me she'd received 6 or 7 manuals at that point, and they were still coming. One showed up on one day, another the next day, and then 3 arrived on the same day after that. She had a stack of identical Maytag refrigerator manuals accumulating in her home, and she did not understand why. "Oh my goodness, ma'am," I told her. "Really? That many? I'm so sorry for the inconvenience." I had just wanted to make absolutely certain she got her manual. After all, she had been very, very clear about how important it was to her. Get rid of my vacation? Have fun replacing me. So this all goes back a few years now, and honestly, I posted it as a comment on someone else's thread first, but enough people responded that I figured it deserved its own space. This is really Jimmy's story more than it is mine, but I was there for all of it, and I've got a front row seat view of how the whole thing played out. So the company I worked at, and I was there for about 4 years total, was a family-owned operation, but don't let that make you think it was some small mom-and-pop shop. We ran 3 full shifts, 250 plus people on the floor. The owner had built something real. And one of the things he built into it was a genuinely incredible benefits package. If you put in 25 years or more, you walked away with 8 weeks of vacation every year. 8 weeks? On top of that, you got 2 weeks of personal time. That's 10 weeks a year where you could essentially be anywhere but work, and they were still cutting you a check. Now, enter Jimmy. Jimmy was one of those grizzled old guys who has just seen everything and gives absolutely zero shits about anything that doesn't directly affect him. He started at this company when he was 20 years old. By the time this story takes place, he's 63. Do the math. That's over 40 years at the same place. He had every single one of those vacation weeks stacked up, and he had earned every last one of them. Jimmy also had something else nobody else in that building had. He knew how to make a very specific part for a product, a specialized, patented part. Him and one other person in the office. That was it. 2 people in the entire company who could produce this thing. Jimmy on the floor and one guy upstairs. Now, for years, everything was fine. The owner was getting older, the company was running, Jimmy was doing his thing. Then one day the plant owner comes out and gathers everybody up and makes an announcement. He's selling, he's older, he's ready to retire, he's done it. And to his credit, he stood up there and promised us all that there would be very little change. He said it with sincerity. I think he genuinely believed it. He shook hands, wished everyone well, and that was kind of that. The new corporation showed up almost immediately. And I mean immediately. They did not waste any time making their presence felt. The very first thing they do is go straight at the benefits. They slash the maximum vacation from 8 weeks down to 4. Gone. Just like that. Personal time, completely eliminated. And for anyone who had already maxed out, anyone sitting on more than 4 weeks, they had until December 31st of that year to burn it, because they were not paying it out. They made that very clear. Use it or lose it, and we don't mean that in the friendly way. Then they go into the office and start cleaning house. Anyone who's close to retirement age gets fired. They just started walking people out. And in the process of doing that, they fire Jimmy's backup, the one other person in the entire building who knew how to make that part. Gone. But here's the thing that really matters, the part that set all of this in motion. In all of their restructuring and policy changes, they also did away with one very specific rule that the old company had. Under the old system, you had to get your vacation approved ahead of time. You had to submit it, get a sign-off, plan around production schedules. Makes sense for a manufacturing floor. Under the new policy, you don't have to get anything approved. You can just call in and take the day. They probably thought that would make people happy, throw them a little bone after taking away half their vacation. What they didn't think about was Jimmy. Jimmy was pissed, and they knew it. You could see it, the whole floor could see it. And to their credit, at least the new management wasn't completely oblivious. They realized pretty quickly that they had a serious problem on their hands. Jimmy was now the only living human being in that building who could produce this critical component. So they do what any corporation would do. They hire a new kid and tell Jimmy to train him. The intention was pretty clear. Get the knowledge out of Jimmy's head and into somebody younger and cheaper, and then Jimmy's expendable too. So Jimmy does what anyone in his position would do. On the very first day the new hire shows up for training, Jimmy calls in. Doesn't show up. Just calls in. And along with that call, he lets them know he's going to be using all of his remaining PTO. Every single bit of it. Back to back. He was sitting on 10 weeks at that point. The 8 vacation weeks plus the 2 personal time weeks that he had to burn before the end of the year. And he was going to use every last one of them consecutively, starting right now. 10 weeks. The company still had a backstock of the parts Jimmy had been making, so the first few weeks weren't catastrophic. Production kept moving. People told themselves it would be fine, that he'd come back, that they'd figure it out. But while all of that was happening, while they were burning through that backstock and waiting, Jimmy was out there doing something extremely productive with his 10 weeks off. He was applying for jobs. He found one, and he started. Fast forward to the day Jimmy is supposed to walk back through those doors. He doesn't show up. They wait. Day 2, still no Jimmy. They start calling him. He doesn't answer. At some point, they actually send someone to his house. He's nowhere to be found. Day 3, finally Jimmy calls in, and he resigns. They lose their minds, and they should, because here's the reality of what they're now sitting with. The parts Jimmy made are specialized. They're patented by the original founder, the guy who just retired. You cannot go on some job board and find someone who knows how to make these. There is no training manual you can just hand to a new hire. The knowledge lived in 2 people. They fired one and just chased off the other one, and now they are stuck. What ended up happening was they had to go back to the original owner. Had to contact the guy who had just sold them the company and retired, explain the situation, and basically ask him to come in and teach a new group of people how to produce these parts from scratch. And when that man found out everything the new company had done, the benefit cuts, the firings, all of it, he was not happy. Not even a little bit. From what I heard, he looked at the situation they'd created and basically said, "You need my help? All right. It'll cost you $1 million, a 7-figure contract, and they had to pay it. What's the alternative? Close down?" Now I want to address something because people asked about this. Jimmy didn't exactly miss out on any kind of 7-figure opportunity himself. He wasn't in a position to offer that kind of contract, and honestly, I don't think he would have wanted to. Jimmy left, said forget these people, and moved on. The $1 million number was the original owner capitalizing on a mess that wasn't of his making. Jimmy got what he actually wanted, which was out. Moral of the whole thing? Don't mess with people's vacation time. Oh, and one more detail people kept asking about. What exactly did Jimmy make? He made an electronic control module, sealed unit, set inside a poured 2-part epoxy housing. Once it's in there, it's in there. You can't just crack one open and reverse engineer it. That's why the knowledge was so locked up in the people who made it, rather than any kind of documentation anybody could just pick up and read. Now, the story doesn't fully end there, and I've had a few updates to share over time, so let me bring you all the way current. It's now 2025, and this post has kept rolling in comments and likes in a way I genuinely did not expect. I had no idea it would take off like it did when I first wrote it up, but here's where things stand. Jimmy is still around. I see him from time to time, especially at the local watering hole, our spot. He's still kicking, still exactly his old self, which is exactly what you'd want to hear. The company we both worked at went through a major restructuring about 2 years ago. Things got better there. Apparently, the employees had gotten fed up enough that there was a real push to bring in a union. They were actively gearing up to vote on it. That kind of thing tends to wake a company up real fast. And somehow, in the middle of all that, Jimmy went back. But not without conditions. Jimmy's not stupid, and he was not walking back in there without getting something for it. Part of his deal for returning, his actual stipulations, were the full reinstatement of all the benefits he'd lost. All of them. And on top of that, he named 2 specific higher-ups that he wanted dealt with. Not just him, either. These were people that multiple employees had raised issues about. 2 weeks after Jimmy started back, both of those people were walked out of the building and told not to come back. I can only imagine the look on Jimmy's face watching that happen. Probably the most satisfied he'd looked in years. As for me, I moved on to bigger and better things after my time there. But their new HR department and talent recruitment team have been reaching out pretty consistently, asking me to come back. I've decided I'll at least sit down with them and hear what they have to say. Maybe I'll ask for extra vacation time while I'm at it. I showed Jimmy this whole post one night when we were out. Sat down next to him at the bar, pulled it up, let him read through the whole thing. His reaction was genuinely one of the funniest moments I've had in a while. He looked up from the screen and said, and keep in mind he was probably 2 beers deep at this point. He goes, "Those fucktards didn't know who they were messing with. They sure as shit know now." Classic Jimmy. I've got family still working at that company, so if anything else comes up that's worth sharing, I'll keep you all posted. I also have a few other Jimmy stories from my time there that I might end up posting when the right threads come up, because honestly, this man's career was full of moments like this one. But yeah, that's the Jimmy story. Don't cut corners on the people who hold the institutional knowledge. Don't fire the only other person who can do a critical job. And for the love of everything, don't touch people's vacation time. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of this one, genuinely thank you. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the story, a like helps more than you'd think. And drop a comment if you've ever worked with a Jimmy type, or if you've been the Jimmy yourself. And if you're new around here, subscribe so you catch the next one.